Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Naistiti Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 8, Dhruva Mahārāja leaves home. So there are 7 sections in this beautiful chapter, and we are now in the second section where we see Suruci, she criticizes Dhruva, and Dhruva's very intense reaction on Suruci's criticism. First text 1 to 5, they describe about lineage of Adharma, and now it is Suruci and Dhruva interaction. So, text 6. Athata kirtaye vamsham punyakirte kurudvaha swayam bhuvasyapi manor hareramsham shajanmanaha. Translation.
Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuri dynasty, I shall now describe to you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, who was born of a part of a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma is a powerful expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Brahma is a Jiva Tattva, he is empowered by the Lord, and therefore he is considered a plenary expansion of the Supreme Godhead. Sometimes it happens that when there is no suitable living being to be empowered to act as Brahma, the Supreme Lord himself appears as Brahma. Brahma is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Swayambhuva Manu was the direct son of Brahma. The great sage Maitreya is now going to explain about the descendants of this Manu, all of whom are widely celebrated for their pious activities. Before speaking of these pious descendants, Maitreya has already described the descendants of impious activities, representing anger, envy, unpalatable speech, quarrel, fear, and death. Purposely, therefore, he is next relating the history of the life of Dhruva Mahārāja, the most pious king within this universe. Hare Krishna.
So now, Athata kirtaye vamsha punya kirte kurudvaha. So Punya Kirti, so he is very, very famous for Punya Kirti, and Kurudvaha, hero best of the Kuru dynasty, Kurudvaha. Please hear from me here. Now the Manu's descendants, I shall now describe unto you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, and there are 2 qualities being mentioned here. They are born of Harer Amshamsha Janmanaha. They are born of the part of the plenary expansions of the Lord, and they produce the parts of the Supreme Lord. Right. So especially in this dynasty, there is appearance of Kapila, then Yagya, Prithu, Rishabha. These are the personalities who are coming in this dynasty, and therefore they are considered as Hare Ramshamsha Janmana. Specifically 4 of them, Kapila, Yagya, Prithu, and Rishabhadev. Later we'll see in the 5th canto. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Brahma is Jiva Tattva, but he is empowered, Shakti Avesha. So he's empowered by the Supreme Lord and thus considered as the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord. Why? The very simple principle of rod and fire. When the iron rod is in touch with the fire, the rod acts itself as the fire. The rod will lose its qualities of. Similarly, Lord Brahma, by his surrender, he is in so much sync with the Supreme Lord that literally, Lord performs all his activities, some of his activities, through the personality of Brahmaji. And therefore, he is also considered as incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And this dynasty is very famous. So Maitreya has already described the descendants of the Adharma: anger, envy, durukti, quarrel, fear, death. And purposefully now he is relating the history of the life of Dhruva Mahārāja, which is Punya Kirtehe, very, very auspicious. Text 7. Now we will see Manu's sons, right? Priyavrata Uttānapādau Shatarupa Pate Sutau Vasudevasya Kanaya Rakshayam Jagatastitau. Translation.
Swayambhuva Manu
had two sons by his wife Shatarupa, and the names of the sons were Uttānapāda and Priyavrata. Because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. Purport. It is said that these two, Uttānapāda and Priyavrata, were specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlike the great King Rishabha, who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Hare Krishna.
So now we begin with Dhruva Charitra. It begins with explanation of Priyavrata and Uttānapāda. Now, the life of Priyavrata will be covered in the subsequent chapters. Very amazing, the life of Priyavrata. Maharaj Uttānapāda was also equally great. But Uttānapāda Maharaj, because of one mistake of not speaking in time in favor of Dhruva, is like sidelined. A lot of activities of his will not be covered. But these were two great personalities. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons, Uttānapāda and Priyavrata. So these sons were born as the Lord's expansions and themselves expansions of the Supreme Lord, and produced expansions of the Supreme Lord like Kapila. So this is Manu's dynasty. Manu's dynasty is Vasudeva Kalaya. They were competent to rule the entire universe and maintain the citizens. And so Manu, his wife Shatarupa, they had two sons, Uttānapāda, Priyavrata, three daughters, Akuti, Prasuti, Devahuti. And these cantos are dedicated to the dynasties of these great personalities. Slight differentiation Prabhupada makes here. King Rishabha, then we will see Rishabhadev, he is Vasudeva himself. Okay. And these two kings, Uttānapāda and Priyavrata, they are Shakti Avesha. So they are, the very specifically empowered. But King Rishabha is expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Uttānapāda, Priyavrata, they are Jiva Tattva, whereas King Rishabha is Viṣṇu Tattva expanded, as Kala and incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Text 8. Jaye Uttānapādasya Sunīti Suruchustayo Suruci preyase patnyu na itarayat suto Dhruvaha. Translation.
King Uttānapāda had two queens, named Sunīti and Suruci. Suruci was much more dear to the king Sunīti. Sunīti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. Purport. The great sage Maitreya wanted to describe the pious activities of the kings. Priyavrata was the first son of Swayambhuva Manu and Uttānapāda was the second. But the great sage Maitreya immediately began to speak of Dhruva Mahārāja, the son of Uttānapāda, because Maitreya was very eager to describe the pious activities. The incidents in the life of Dhruva Mahārāja are very attractive for devotees. From his pious actions, one can learn how one can detach himself from material possessions and how one can enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. By hearing the activities of pious Dhruva, one can enhance one's faith in God and can directly connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And thus, one can very soon be elevated to the transcendental platform of devotional service. The example of Dhruva Mahārāja's austerities can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah. So Bhagavatam quickly picks up now. It's like the plane taking off. King Uttānapāda had two queens, Sunīti and Suruci. Suruci was very dear, just like her name is. Sunīti was very pious and greatly devoted, greatly qualified, but not as favorite as Suruci. And Sunīti had a great son, Dhruva. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Priyavrat was the first son of Swayambhuva Manu. By the preaching and influence of Narada Muni, Priyavrat became brahmachari. And later we'll see that Priyavrat was personally pleaded when there was no suitable ruler. After the generations of Uttānapāda, Priyavrat was again asked to rule, come back and rule. But Priyavrat was a brahmachari. And then automatically the kingdom came to Uttānapāda. And Uttānapāda had these two queens. And this incident of Maharaj, now here Maitreya is so eager to speak about Dhruva Mahārāja that he want to quickly come to the point of Dhruva, and he just started with Ekada, once upon a time. So Prabhupada says, incident in the lives of Dhruva Mahārāja were very attractive for the devotees. Why? Two things Prabhupada says. One thing is how the devotees can learn how they can detach oneself from material possessions and how to enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. So this is the Charitra of Dhruva Charitra. And this Charitra can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. Text 9. Ekada Suruce Putram Ankamaropyalalayan Uttamam Nanurukshantam Dhruvam Raja Abhyanandata. Translation.
Once upon a time, King Uttānapāda was patting the son of Suruci Uttama, placing him on his lap. Dhruva Mahārāja was also trying to get on the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him.
Yeah. Ekada, once upon a time. Okay, the beautiful pastime of Dhruva begins here. Once upon a time, Uttānapāda was patting the son of Uttama, who was seated on his lap. Dhruva, when he saw his brother, he was raised on the lap. He wanted to sit on the another lap of his father. But there was the presence of Suruci and Uttānapāda, because he was slave to the beauty and to the Suruci. King did not very much welcome him, right? So Śrīmad Bhāgavatam knows everything. This is the heart of Uttānapāda is being revealed here by Maitreya Muni. So natural that Uttam was sitting and his father was cajoling him. Dhruva also immediately want to go and sit on the father's lap. Text 10. Tatha chikirshamanam tam sapatnya tanayam dhruvam Suruci shrunvato radnyah sa irsham ah atigarvita. Translation.
While the child Dhruva Mahārāja was trying to get on the lap of his father, Suruci, his stepmother, became very envious of the child, and with great pride she began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. Purport. The king, of course, was equally affectionate toward both his sons, Uttama and Dhruva. So he had a natural inclination to take Dhruva as well as Uttama on his lap, but because of his favoritism towards his queen, Suruci, he could not welcome Dhruva Mahārāja. Despite his feelings, King Uttānapāda's feeling was understood by Suruci, and therefore, with the great pride, she began to speak about the king's affection for her. This is the nature of woman. If a woman understands that her husband regards her as a favorite, and is especially affectionate to her, she takes undue advantage. These symptoms are visible even in such an elevated society as family of Swayambhu Manu. Therefore, it is concluded that the feminine nature of women is present everywhere. Correct.
So, Ati Garvita. While the child Dhruva Maharaj was trying to sit on the lap, Suruci became very envious of the child. So there are two Malays here. One is envy, and she was very envious. Another is pride, and she was greatly proud. Just imagine, if one monkey is enough, two drunken monkeys. And this is how Sunīti was under the influence of Ati Garvita, right? She began to speak as if to be heard by the king himself. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explained, the king was equally affectionate to Uttama and Dhruva. And he was naturally inclined towards Dhruva as well. And because he picked up Uttama, he also wanted to pick up Dhruva. But because of his favoritism towards Queen Suruci, he did not welcome Dhruva Maharaj. And this was sensed by Suruci very well. Suruci picked up this point that she understood the uneasy feeling of Uttānapāda towards Dhruva, and therefore with great pride, Ati Garvita, she began to speak about king's affection to her. And Srila Prabhupada further mentions, this is the nature of a Prakriti in general. And this is, a woman is mentioned here in the context of, this is a pastime going on between Uttānapāda and Sunīti and Suruci. This is very much true, even when somebody is boss has two people reporting, and just imagine there is a boss, there is a project manager, and he has two senior software engineers working under him. So, and one software engineer is favorite because of some reason, because maybe he comes from the same region, there is some language similarity, or he comes from the same something. Automatically, the person who is favorite will take the undue advantage. And Prabhupada says, this nature is visible even in the personalities, elevated family as the family of Swayambhuva Manu. And this nature is present everywhere. In this case, we see Suruci becoming unnecessarily envious of Dhruva, and with great pride, she is speaking about her relationship with Uttānapāda. Text 11. Navatsandrupate Dhikṣṇam Bhavanarodhudamarhati Nagrihita Maya Yatvam Kukshau Api Nrupatmajaha. Translation.
Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, my dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. Purport. Queen Suruchi very proudly informed Dhruva Maharaj that to be the king's son was not the qualification for sitting on the lap or throne of the king. Rather, this privilege was dependent on one's having taken birth from her womb. In other words, she indirectly informed Dhruva Maharaj that although he happened to be born of the king, he was considered an intelligent son because of his birth from the womb of the other queen.
Navatsa Nrupate Dhikṣṇam. My dear child, very sarcastically, Ati Garvita, very proud Suruci, she began to speak. You do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. So, look at this point. Here, Dhruva is simply wanted to, climb on the lap. But because Suruci always had throne in the mind, she was thinking that, this child is trying to become the successor of the king by trying to climb over. And in Marathi we say, right, Mani vase tisrishti dise. Whatever is there in your mind, you will always see everywhere. Whatever is there in the mind, you will always see everywhere. And this is how, because she always thought of the throne, she said, you cannot sit on the throne. Arey, Dhruva is just trying to climb on the lap of his father. There was no question of he's trying to get the throne. But she thought symbolically, Dhruva climbing up like this means he is trying to get on the throne. And she said, no, you cannot sit on the throne or lap of the king because you have not taken birth from my womb. Your qualification as only son of Uttānapāda is not sufficient. You have to be also son of Suruci. That is more important than simply being son of Uttānapāda. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that Queen Suruci was very proud, and she indirectly said that although you are born to a king, that is not sufficient because you have not taken birth from my womb, but from other queen, your birth is very insignificant. So this is how this was informed. Text 12. Balopi balosi batanatmanam anyastri garbha samvritam nunam veda bhavan yasya durlabharthe manoratha. Translation.
My dear child, you are unaware that you are born not of my womb but of another woman. Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. Purport. The small child Dhruva Mahārāja was naturally affectionate towards his father, and he did not know that there was a distinction between his two mothers. This distinction was pointed out by Queen Suruci, who informed him that since he was a child, he did not understand the distinction between two queens. This is another statement of Queen Suruci's pride.
Yeah. She said, Balopi. So baby, modern like we say, baby, you are not aware. You are not aware that you are not born from my womb, but some another queen, another woman, and she did not even did not mention the name also. Who is that another personality? Who is the great queen? Sunīti. I did not mention the name also, right? Not worth mentioning name. You should know that your attempt is doomed to failure because you are trying to fulfill Durlabharthe Manoratha. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to be fulfilled. Some simple climbing and Suruci is making it is very, very political. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, small child, Bala, Dhruva, was naturally affectionate towards his father. And he was not aware of the difference between father's affection for one mother and another mother. For him, it was like both mothers were very great. But this distinction was pointed by Suruci, and due to Prabhupada writes here, this is the statement of Ati Garvita coming from the great pride. Text 13. Tapasaradhya purusham yasyaiva anugrahena me garbhe tvam sadhyatmanam yadiyachasi nrupasanam. Translation.
If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nārāyaṇa. And then, when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. Purport. Suruci was so envious of Dhruva Mahārāja that she indirectly asked him to change his body. According to her, first of all, he had to die, then take his next body in her womb, and only then would it be possible for Dhruva Mahārāja to ascend the throne of his father.
So Suruci said, Tapasa taparadhya. Jao, do tapasya and please the Supreme Lord, Purusham, tasyaiva anugrahenami. And then what will happen is, my garbhatvam sadhyam atmanam, that you will have the fortune of being born from my womb, and thus in your next birth, there is possibility that you may ascend to the throne or ascend to the lap of your father. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, Suruci was so envious of Dhruva that she immediately sought him to change his body. So she actually said, Dhruva, you have to die now, do tapasya, die, take the next birth, and then when you take the next birth, then there is some possibility that you may become the king. And here we can see the nature of envy is that, right? Nature of envy is that we meet the same end. This is the nature of envy. So, one second. Later we will see Suruci, she was in such intense separation from Uttama when Uttama is killed by Yaksha. She just runs into the jungles and she is burnt into fire. What she wanted Dhruva to do exactly happens with her. Right. So this is the nature of envy. And therefore, one should never be envious. In fact, Narottam Das Thakur, when he says, Kama Krishna Karma Arpane, Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane, all other 5 anarthas, there is some antidote that they can be engaged somehow and they can be, but envy, there is no antidote to envy. Right. So one has to be carefully not to be envious, because whatever we are going to envy, we are going to meet the same end. Right. So she wanted Dhruva to first die, then take the next body in her womb. And this is how, look at how many verses she is speaking. Correct. So once upon a time, text 10, 11, 12, 13, 4 verses. She just spoke 4 verses. And look at the life that she changed for herself, for her son, and and the way she offended Dhruva, the great personality. Text 14. Maitreya uvacha Matu sapatnya sadurukti viddha Shvasan rushadandahata yathahi Hitva mishantam pitaram sannavacham Jagama matum prarudan sakasham. Translation.
Sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily. Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother.
So this is the reaction of Dhruva. My dear Vidura, Matu sapatnya sa durukti viddha. Viddha means he was burnt by durukti, the harsh speech which comes from adharma that we have previously seen. How the durukti. So Matu sapatnya. So he began to breathe very heavily, as if a snake which is trampled. Ahi. Ahi is the snake. Yathahi. Just like a snake. He starts hissing. The snake starts hissing. So Dhruva began to breathe very heavily because he was disturbed by Durukti, the strong words of his stepmother. He saw that his father was silent and did not protest. So more than mother, he was even upset with his father. He saw Sannavacham. Sannavacham means Pitaram Sannavacham. His father was completely silent and did not speak anything against Suruci. He immediately left the palace and went to his mother Sunīti. Right. So again, one verse will take. Very beautiful verse. This is anger of Dhruva. Tam nishvasantam spuritadharashtam Tam nishvasantam spurita adhara oshtam Sunīti utsangya uddviya balam Nishamya tatpaura mukhat nitantam Sa vyavyatheyat Gaditam sapatnya. Translation.
When Dhruva Mahārāja reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Sunīti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents who had heard all the hard words of Suruci related everything in detail. Thus, Sunīti also became greatly aggrieved. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So, tam nishwasantam. He was breathing very heavily. Spurita adhara oshtam. Right. He was trembling in anger, crying very piteously, and he's biting his lips. His lips were trembling like that. Tat pauramukha. And when Sunīti just saw the child enter like this, she realized that everything is not well, right? And by that time, all the residents, they had come and they vivvate gaditam sapatnya. They just narrated everything that had happened, and thus Sunīti also became very greatly aggrieved. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank
Thank you,
you,
Prabhupada.
everyone.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, yes.
Prabhuji, Suruchi's harsh words or her envy, because of that only Dhruva Maharaj could become like a great devotee of the Lord. So this is also better to him.
Better to?
Means sometimes these envy and these are very useful for the other person also, like
No.
they are
See,
nimitta.
no, but see two things here. Suruchi's envy became nimitta for Dhruva only by the intervention of Sunīti. This is very important.
Okay, yeah,
Now, the who is counselor of Dhruva, Sunīti.
Sunīti, yeah.
And because he received such an amazing counsel, Sunīti could have always told Dhruva, Dhruva, go to gym, make your body, try to revolt against the father, and we'll try to do this and try to do that, some nefarious plan. Dhruva's anger would have gone to some different direction only. So, here the greatness is Sunīti, and actually, who is offended? In a way, Dhruva is offended or Sunīti is offended here?
Yeah, ultimately
Really,
Sunīti.
if you see,
Ultimately Sunīti is offended.
ultimately it is said that you are born of such a disgusted woman, Sunīti. And that's why if you born of me, you can sit. So problem is not with you. Problem is your birth, and you are born from Sunīti. So actually, all this anger is directed, envy is directed towards Sunīti only. And Sunīti knew this very well. She is a queen, right? Queens means, they know what things are and what stands for what. But in spite of such a envy, and we are just one narration, ekada. Just imagine life of Uttānapāda. Sunīti must have behaved like this throughout her life, throughout their lives together, always, disregarding Sunīti in so many different ways. So it became nimitta only because of greatness of Sunīti. That is one thing. And of course, the determination of Dhruva, the energy that he came with. And second thing is, one should, in one's own thing, what happened to Suruci in this case? Suruci was very attached to son, and Suruci was thinking that my son should become the king, and the son was killed. Uttama was killed by Yaksha. And maddened by that news that Uttama is killed, she entered the fire and she also was burnt into fire. Right? So there is our Jayadvait Swami Maharaj, who is very famous for question answer. So one devotee asked him a question. He said that, Maharaj, ISKCON is also in the material world. And in material world, there is always, the 6 changes are there in the material object. It will take birth, it will grow, it will sustain for a time, it will produce byproducts, it will dwindle, and it will die. So does it mean that ISKCON also will die one day? And Maharaj, the way he answers the questions, Jay Advait Swami Maharaj, he said that, yeah, ISKCON will die, it's one day, but you don't become the cause of ISKCON's death. so,
Yes.
so she became nimitta. Okay, this had to happen, but we should not become nimitta. This is very important thing. How many 4 verses she spoke, and completely destroyed her own life, ruined her own son that way. And Dhruva was very, it was not that Dhruva became envious. Mother says, my dear child, don't become envious of your mother. What she is saying is true. You have to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. She just focused everything on with a devotional perspective. And Dhruva was, Dhruva, the angry Dhruva became Dhruva Mahārāja, the celebrated personality. So huge credit goes to Sunīti here for having such a child, having such a guidance to this child and
Yes.
directing the anger properly, positively, right?
Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank
Prabhu,
you.
Thank
do we
okay.
have?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes,
Uh,
Prabhu.
Prabhu, Uttānapāda is empowered personality, is like Shakti Avesh Avatar. But generally, any Shakti Avatar, or any other incarnation has some specific significance and generally following the righteous path. Here, Uttānapāda being even though he is a Shakti Avesh Avatar, he could not control this simple thing towards Dhruva.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how, Uttānapāda, in a way, he missed the opportunity because. So even Dhritarashtra, if you hear Mahabharata, read Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra also was a very great devotee of Lord Krishna. But because of his undue affection to his son, Duryodhan, everything was spoiled for him. So simply having great birth or empowerment will not do. We later see the story of Narakasur, Bhaumasur, right? Who was Bhaumasur? Who is mother of Bhaumasur? Bhudevi. Who is father of Bhaumasur? Varahadev. Just imagine a son who is born from, we have seen that beautiful, the Mahavatar Narsimha movie. We have seen that, the Varahadev picks up Bhudevi and they have a child and his name is Bhauma. But then Bhauma later became Bhaumasur, became Narkasur. So, that free will of a living entity is always there and one has to utilize the free will very well. So simply because he was Shaktavesh avatar, it doesn't suffice. He had to act in that way. And then this instance just did not go very well. All right.
Yeah, yes, right. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.